Namaste. We welcome you once again to this live session of the Jaipur Dialogues, and we have Dr. Shiv Shastry with us. He is a surgeon by profession, but right now he does a fine surgery of all the aircrafts. Namaste, Shiv Shastri ji. How are you?
Namaste. Namaste. Happy to be here. Thank you.
And we have done a session on air warfare earlier with him, and it was widely welcome. So today, Rafale is just a few hours away from Ambala. In fact, as we speak, it might just be entering the Indian airspace in a few hours. So, as it lands, that beautiful beast, as some people call it, is it really worth the hype?
Are you asking me?
Yes, I'm asking you, is it worth the hype?
Well, there has been a lot of hype, I do agree. But yes, I think we needed something like this. It will require some explanation. And I think, we're online precisely for that purpose. I do accept what I think on Twitter, Air Marshal Manmohan Bahadur said, that there should not be so much hype. There are only 5 aircraft coming in and they have to settle in. But on the other hand, there is excitement even among some senior veterans who have pointed out that these aircraft are going to be fully ready for operations once they come in. So that itself is a sort of signal. And I think we need to understand what all this means for us, what the Rafale means for us, and what it can do for India. And I think there's a lot that I can talk about. But see, as I see it, most people have a particular idea about what the Rafale is going to do. So I think in respect to their ideas, I would like to talk about that, but then get a little bit more realistic and talk about how the Rafale is actually going to be used. So for that reason, I would like to start with some of those images. If we could start
If you
with
are
the...
searching for the right keywords, you should try Keyword Magic Tool by SEMrush.
Sorry, I just heard something coming in between. Can I have an image of that, of the table, actually, the features of the Rafale, if that could be projected? So I thought I would start with the features of this Rafale. So it's a very interesting set of features. I'll talk about them. It's got a delta wing with canards. So, okay, this is a bit technical. This has something to do with its control. And apparently, this particular configuration is very good to help Rafale fly at all speeds and all angles of angles of attack that are, that would be difficult in a delta wing without those canards. So I'll move on from that. It's got a quadruple redundant fly-by-wire system. So basically, it's an unstable aircraft and needs computers to fly it. And there are 3 sets of computers and a 4th analog computer, so there's 4 sets. Then it's got reliable M88 engines. Now, what I've failed to mention over here is, as far as I know, I think it's the first aircraft that India is getting that has got what are called FADEC engines, that is full authority digital engine control. That means the computers help to control the engine, so the pilot cannot accidentally make mistakes. And it is said that this particular engine, the pilot can be in idling power and he can slam the throttle forward and it will just accelerate and will have no trouble at all. So this is a very interesting feature that we have. And it's got an AESA radar, which is, again, this is the only Indian aircraft with an AESA radar, which is completely, what shall I say, far ahead of anything else we have at the moment. Because this can scan the air, it can scan the ground, it can get a picture of the air, get a picture of the ground. It scans in pulses at different frequencies, so it's difficult to pick up. So it's an extremely capable radar. And then there are optronic sensors, that's even a TV camera, an infrared camera, that can see and track targets. And it has sensor fusion. Sensor fusion means you have all these sensors that are looking at targets, and it all comes together in a way that the pilot can actually make sense of it and use it. It's also got stealth features. Swing roll capability means that, well, basically this is an aircraft that can both do air-to-air shooting down, fighting other aircraft, and it can also do a ground attack. And this swing roll can be, it doesn't need any pre-configuration. It can carry laser-guided bombs and ground attack munitions, and it can carry air-to-air missiles, and right in the air, the pilot can switch from one role to the other. And there's a very good choice of weapon load. It's a very reliable aircraft, and it's got an extremely long range because it carries a lot of fuel. It carries a lot of fuel because it has a very large, what shall I say, proportion of composites in its structure. And I think the actual outer surface of the Rafale is about 70% composites. Now, the interesting thing about this list is if you look at the whole list, everything is modern. Everything is dependent on electronics, modern electronics. And this is what takes it from generation 4 to 4.5 generation. They say that 5th generation involves stealth. Yes, this is not a full stealth aircraft, but it has stealth features. But everything else is generation 5 type of features, which includes the ESA radar, sensor fusion, the swing roll capability, the weight, and the ability to communicate with other aircraft. So it is a very good 4.5 generation aircraft that's very potent. I will come to how it may be utilized by the Indian Air Force after I go through some pictures, because basically, I have a lot of friends on Twitter, and I've been on a forum before, and we have been discussing, military aircraft. We are a lot of enthusiasts, and none of us are actually in the Air Force, except a few veterans who sometimes talk to us. And ever since Balakot, there's been this impression, propagated by the Pakistanis, in fact, that the F-16s had these AMRAAMs, which have a much longer reach than the Indian missiles carried on the Su-30s. So our planes were kept away; they couldn't do anything. And now that Rafale has come, now the Rafale has got the Meteor air-to-air missile, and the Meteor air-to-air missile is a long range, and now we can shoot them all out of the sky. So let me give respect to these feelings at least, and talk about what are the planes that we may need to shoot out of the sky before I come to how the Rafale may actually be used. Now,
can I interrupt you here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We were talking about some stealth features.
Yeah.
What exactly are these stealth features in Rafale?
Rafale stealth features, in fact, I don't know the details, but if you do go through, I have to get these details basically from what is said by the manufacturer. They've got these the trailing edges of both wings have got these serrated teeth-like formations, which which do not give the kind of radar signals that would be given by normal aircraft. And the shaping also of the Rafale has been done in a way that it is relatively stealthy, although it's probably not as stealthy as, say, the F-35 or the F-22. I won't talk about the J-20 now.
J-20, yes.
Yeah, and the other thing is
stealth features are claimed only by the Chinese. Okay, we'll come to that.
And the other thing is, if you look at the intakes, they're sort of under the cockpit and under the chin on the sides of the fuselage, and they are not in direct line with the actual engine face, because the engine face throws a big radar signal. The engine face can't be seen through the intake. So these are all basically some stealth features which are important. So let me just move on to, the opposition, shall we say. What are the aircraft that say, let us start with the Chinese aircraft that the Rafale and the Indian Air Force may be faced with. Then we'll go on to the Pakistani aircraft, after which I will come to warfare and the sort of the ways in which aircraft may be used. Let's get past this dogfighting business and air-to-air things first. So can we start with the Chinese aircraft?
Yes, sure.
Okay, this is a very old aircraft. It's called the Oh, all right. Yeah, we can, let's keep this. Let's stay on this. This is the latest Chinese J-20. I think it was in 2011, the Chinese announced that they suddenly had an equivalent to the stealth aircraft of America. And they said by 2013, it will be in service. Obviously, that hasn't happened. It's sort of gone into service now. It's not fully ready yet. It's got stealth shaping. No, you can in fact see that it's also got these serrated teeth-like edges on the surfaces that it can see. But it's got one heck of a lot of radar reflecting surfaces. It's probably stealthy in a head-on direction. That is, if it's heading towards a target, it's probably stealthy. But it's got apparently the Indian Air Force has tracked this plane over Tibet. So it's stealth. So personally, I don't think this aircraft is going to be involved in any kind of combat, any kind of standoff with India, because I think they have very few. I think they have only 20. I doubt if they'll come at this. They have other aircraft. The Chinese do have other aircraft that they can use. I doubt if the J-20 is going to come. And if the J-20 comes, it's still underpowered. It doesn't have enough power. I am told that they've recently added thrust vectoring to its engine. I don't know why they've done it. I don't know if they want to make it more maneuverable. Without the thrust vectoring, unless the engine is powerful enough, it's only going to slow the aircraft down some more. So anyway, we have to see. So let's just move on to the next aircraft. Anything, just get like, yeah. This is the J-10. The J-10 is the first Chinese indigenous effort, and it has got certain features that is based on the Israel Air Force Lavi aircraft. It is claimed by the Chinese to be very maneuverable and a very capable fighter. But on the other hand, when you look at some of its specifications, you find that it needs those it's carrying three drop tanks. Its range is not good. And over Tibet, if it's not going to be able to operate from Tibet airfields, it will have to come from Xinjiang. By the time it comes from Xinjiang, it will have used up already 300 kilometers of its radius. And then it probably can't spend too much time over the target areas before it has to go back. So that's the J-10. Can we go on to the next image, please?
Okay.
This is a very old aircraft. This was basically China's first. What the Chinese did was to take the MiG-21 and they modified it. They made a larger size MiG-21, and then they said, okay, we don't want the intake of the MiG, like the MiG-21, to be in front of the fuselage. So they moved the air intakes to the side and put a radar cone in front. So yes, the Chinese did get some experience in developing this, but this is basically a third generation aircraft, second to third generation, I would say. And I seriously doubt if it has the capability to function effectively in a scenario with the Indian Air Force. So, in fact, I ruled this out. I think the Chinese will probably use their Su-27 clones or the or what they call the J-11 or the J-10s in anything that happens with us. Can I have let's just go through the Pakistani aircraft.
Okay.
I completely forgot. I think I've left out one thing. There is a Su-30, not Su-30, the Su-27 clone that the Chinese have made. And that is called the J-11. That is a capable aircraft. It is a very capable aircraft. It can operate from, I don't know if there's an image there. This is not the one, yeah. Maybe I've forgotten to send it, but I think most viewers will know what it looks like. It looks somewhat like a Su-30. It's a very capable aircraft. It's got a good range. It's got a heavy weapon load. And I suspect this is going to be one of the major aircraft that the Chinese would use against us. Now the question, people would want to know, would the Rafale defeat the J-10, the J-11 or the Su-27 in combat? And I would say, yes, it's got a very good chance of doing that because of its avionics and its long range Meteor missile. But we have to remember that the Rafale may not necessarily be used only in the shooting down mode, that is, carrying a lot of missiles, getting ready to shoot some aircraft down. The Rafale may be weighed by bombs and missiles and going to do another mission. Now, that is the sort of scenario in which the Rafale itself would be under some threat from any aircraft, such as the Su-27. We'll come to how this might pan out later. Let me finish with the aircraft, with the Pakistani aircraft at this stage.
Okay.
Now, this is such a pretty aircraft. It's the Mirage 3. It's an earlier generation Mirage that the Pakistanis have. Mirage 3, and the export version of the Mirage 3 was called the Mirage 5. Basically, they're very old. They're falling out of the sky. And Pakistanis are buying all sorts of old airframes, and they're cannibalizing them. It's such a pretty aircraft. It's used mainly for attack. I don't think this is going to be much of a threat. In a kind of war scenario, I'm really not sure what would be the serviceability of these. By serviceability, I mean that now, supposing the Pakistanis have 12 Mirage 3s in an airbase ready to fly out, and they may not really have more than 6 or 7 of them ready to fly because there may be something or the other that's broken. So this is the kind of thing about serviceability. So this is about the Mirage 3. Can I have the other one, please? Next one. This is the J-10. Now the Pakistanis, this is a collaboration with China. They say collaboration. It was basically designed and made by China, and Pakistanis are claiming some kind of credit for that. They have 140 of these, and they're going to actually get some more of these. And these are going to be used in attack. They're going to be, in fact, the missile with the blue nose, I think, is a C-802 anti-shipping missile. And off to the right, there's, I think, off the gray thing on the right is a sensor pod. So the J-10 has some capabilities. Yes, of course, the J-10 is I would say the J-10 is less than our MiG-21. So I'm absolutely certain that we don't even talk about the Rafale. The Rafale would just erase it.
Yeah,
But yeah, but like I said, Rafale has not been bought to erase something or the other. It's been bought to act within, as teamwork with other things. And I will come to that again. Can I have the next aircraft, please? I deliberately put up this image. This is the F-16, as a lot of people will recognize. This is a very, very capable aircraft. In fact, if you go, there's a site called Hushkit, and they keep posting on Twitter, and they post interviews with various pilots. And in fact, there's an interview of a French Rafale pilot taking on an F-16 in a dogfight, and he said it's not easy. It's not. This is a very capable fighter. The reason I put up this image is that there's a two-seater in the background, number F606. That's the one that was actually shot down by Abhinandan. It's not there anymore. I should just erase it.
I know. they pretended to crash it.
And they said they shot down a Su-30. But it's a very capable aircraft. Now, and it is true to an extent that, there was one scenario, apparently NATO aircraft like the F-16, armed with AMRAAM missiles such as the one that is being carried over here, would start shooting at Soviet aircraft from long ranges. They would fire off these $500,000 missiles, and then they would just keep firing them off at a long range and hoping it would hit. I think that's what the Pakistanis did. They fired them off at a long range. They all didn't hit except when Abhinandan came close by. But this is a threat. This is a very good aircraft. I think the Rafale can take care of it because of its electronics and things, if it is in the air defense configuration. But if the Rafale is carrying a load of bombs, it will need help from another Rafale or maybe a Su-30 for escort and maybe an AWACS. And of course, Su-30s also, incidentally, can act as a mini AWACS. So the Rafale itself has got some very good electronics, so they can jam radars and things like that. So it depends on what sort of load the Rafale is carrying. The Rafale is heavily loaded with tanks and bombs. Then, obviously the F-16 with a couple of missiles or 4 missiles would be very agile and would serve as a threat. But in the air defense configuration, no. I think, the Rafale would take this out at a long distance before anything happened. Let's move on to the next image. Okay, this is the MiG-27 clone that the Chinese gave to the Pakistanis. It's obsolete. The F-7. It is this is like the MiGs we got in 1962. This is like the original MiG. And as you can see, it has no radar. It does something. I think it sort of fluffs up numbers, and numbers have a. What happens is, they could probably use it somewhere, and they would if. As I was telling somebody, in 1965 we had these Vampire aircraft that unfortunately did badly. They were shot down, but we did use them again in 1971. And a pilot actually won a Mahavir. Was, I think, nominated for a Mahavir Chakra, but got a Veer Chakra for his action. The Vampires were used in Kargil in 1971. So even if it's an old aircraft in a hot war, you have to respect the fact that he's carrying a Chinese, what looks like a Chinese knockoff of a Sidewinder missile. So missiles are dangerous things. So. But if push comes to shove, any of our aircraft would be able to take this down.
What are the numbers, right, for these aircrafts?
I think they have about 100 of these, 80 or so of these. I'm not sure exactly. They have about 80 of these. Again, they're long in tooth. They're falling out of the sky. In general, the Pakistani doctrine has been to defend from the sky. And if you look at the history of the way Pakistan has fought wars, the PAF has its honor and dignity, and it's got nothing to do with the army. So the PAF says the army is welcome to lose a war. We will win. We'll shoot down so many aircraft. Yes, they'll shoot down aircraft because Indian aircraft have been attacking Pakistan. When they're attacking, they're loaded with bombs. Pakistani aircraft can shoot them down. One reason for never crashing is if you don't fly. If you keep all planes, they'll never crash. Then if planes are flying, you will have some accidents because the type of flying that's done, the weather and things like that.
There's a saying.
Yeah.
That a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what the ships are for.
Precisely. So, for instance, I remember, of course, a lot of people who know me on Twitter know that my cousin, who's now no more, fought in the 71 war. He was in Longewala and he shot down a Sabre, Wing Commander Suresh. Now, he was telling me that towards the end of the war, they were getting, he was flying Hunters then. They were getting frustrated because the PAF was avoiding combat. They were going away. Now, in 1999, they did exactly the same thing. They avoided combat. They were going away towards the end. So whether this is, we can't say the PAF will do that. They're a good Air Force. I'll come to that. I will come to that in a minute. So we can't rely on them to run away. It's very nice for us to laugh, but we have to be cautious. They are a good, well-trained Air Force. And but their doctrine has been to try and win. The thing is, Indian planes go over Pakistan, they'll shoot. This is what they tried again in Balakot. They said they'll shoot some Indian aircraft down. They were not bothered about the Balakot attack. They wanted to take a Su-30 down, and then say we won. Look, even now they're saying that they say we got a Su-30 in. So anyway, we're here for the Rafale, and let me move on and move ahead. I'll just have a sip of water if you don't mind.
Yes, sure. Meantime, I'll request all my viewers that please keep asking questions, and also share, like, and subscribe this video. I think you're getting excellent content from Dr. Shastri, and you would not like your friends to miss it either.
Okay, so now in the context of what does the Rafale bring to the Indian Air Force? So I think I would like to start with the history of air warfare. Aircraft first started being used in war in World War I. In World War I, they suddenly started doing reconnaissance and dropping bombs. And especially in space, nothing much could be done about them until every side got interceptor aircraft, then there used to be these fantastic dogfights where, tens or scores or hundreds of aircraft would be shot down. So that, World War One went past, and then we got to World War Two. So in World War Two, World War Two was the time when the Germans first invented this concept of going and using aircraft to hammer somebody. They practiced in Spain. They hammered. They used their Stukas in Spain first, and after that they absolutely hammered France, and they got through France using their Stukas. So that's when the concept of ground attack really took off. And then the opposition, the people whom we call allies, didn't know what to do until they started making newer and newer, better planes. And then we again started having dogfights. You talk about a great aircraft, say a Spitfire having a dogfight with a ME-109. So you had these air fights. Now, but the other thing that took off along in World War II was the ability to shoot down aircraft from the ground. So a lot of, there were anti-aircraft, extremely good anti-aircraft guns. There was the 88 millimeter used by the Germans. There were others. I think there were 40 pounders or something used by the British. But in general, they would have to fire about 5,000 to 10,000 shells to get one aircraft down. But yes, you can manufacture. Shells are cheap. You can manufacture them by the million. So you can keep shooting at the air, shooting, and bring the aircraft were being shot down. This is what happened. Now, after World War II ended, what happened was nuclear weapons had developed. At that time, the major countries that had nuclear weapons, they thought that now there's no need for dogfight, nothing, fighter. We have bombers. All we'll do is we'll take our bomber flying high, supersonic if necessary, and we'll go and drop nuclear bombs on somebody or the other. This is what happened. So then the thought came how to intercept these nuclear bombers. They started making these fast, sharp-nosed fighters, which are very fast. The MiG-21 was actually one of those. The F-104 also was one of those. So, this, even during the Vietnam War and Korean War, dogfights again came up. Okay. You found that the Americans found in the Korean War that the MiG-15, I think it was shooting down their sabers. They wanted something better. And again, it was a lot of dogfighting like World War I and World War II. Until in Vietnam, the Soviets gave the SA-2 missiles to Vietnam. Now the SA-2 missiles started shooting down American aircraft. Now, once the SA-2 started shooting down American aircraft, the Americans had to develop some counter to it. And this is where this modern concept of war started. And now there was one more thing ahead. What happened is we go to 1971 war between India and Pakistan. Now, what Pakistan did was, okay, now by this time it was well established from World War I right up to after the Vietnam War, it was well established. In fact, Vietnam War was still going on in 1971. So it was well established that air power is a very good thing, is a thing. So what the Pakistanis did, and we Indians expected it, the Pakistanis said that we are going to knock out all Indian airfields. So they had a preemptive strike on the night of 4th December. And they tried to knock off all the Indian airfields. Now, this is actually a very good tactic. Because, knocking off airfields is one thing, but if you have planes parked there, you'll knock off the planes, then we have no air force left. And this can be a very effective tactic. I'll come to that. But what happened in 1971 was India was expecting it. So all our planes were in different way, airfields way inside. And we had learned a lesson in 1965 itself. There's a man called Air Commodore Hyder, who's written an autobiography. A good pilot, a very interesting autobiography. I've done a review of his book. He was the man who this was in 1965, he led an attack on the Pathankot airfield. And we had just got our MiG-21s in 1962. They were not yet operational in 1965. So they were sitting around in Pathankot airfield. And this man, Air Commodore Hyder, what he did, he describes this in his autobiography. He was planning an attack to knock out Pathankot airfield. So before the flight, in the crew room, in his airbase, he asked for buckets of cologne with eau de cologne, and asked his fellow pilots to put eau de cologne on themselves. So the Houris would, in case they were shot down, the Houris up in heaven, in Jannat, would get a fine smelling pilot. Turned out that none of them got shot down, but that was a very successful air raid. They knocked off a whole lot of MiG-21s, on the ground. So MiG-21s were pretty much knocked out of the war in 1965. But we had learned this lesson. Having learned this lesson in 1971, our planes did not get destroyed on the ground. So at 1973, now you come to the 1973 Arab-Israeli war. Israelis went and knocked out the entire Arab Air Force on the ground. No Air Force. And they won. 1982, again, Arab-Israeli war. This time the Arabs had learned a lesson. This time they had a whole lot of Soviet missiles. They started shooting Israeli planes out of the sky. So this is how the air war is developed. No longer is it dogfights. There's missiles on the ground. There's radars to look for the aircraft. And there are electronic measures to detect aircraft, countermeasures and things like that. And this is where I think the Rafale comes in. This is where I would expect the Rafale to come in. Now, Rafale is extremely capable. It's got an extremely good radar. Now, what happens is if you send a radar signal out, okay, it will be some particular frequency. Okay, you send a radar signal out. It goes the thing like a bat, like an echo. The radar echo comes back. If you send the same frequency out, the other fellow is going to listen to that frequency and he's going to jam it and he's going to know where it's coming from. But when you have an ASA radar, what happens is it just sends out little pulses. It sends out a little pulse of this frequency, and it sends out a little pulse of that frequency. It sends out one in this direction, sends out one in that direction. And the computer knows what it has sent out. So it will just listen only for that echo. So it's very difficult to detect. They won't know. If you beam something with a radar, they'll know that the opposition will know that the plane is coming. But the ASA radar will prevent that. Also, it does other things. It can find targets on the ground. And Rafale has also got, optronic equipment, that is like TV camera and other cameras to actually see from a long distance. And then it's got smart munitions. And if we can just have that image of the Rafale, there was an image of the Rafale initially, if I can have that.
Yes, right in the beginning. Yes, we can bring it on.
Right,
yes.
Yeah. I deliberately selected that image. I'll explain why.
Yeah, it'll take a minute to come on.
Yeah, sure. See, in the last few days, there's suddenly been the news that India has ordered Hammer munitions, Hammer missiles. Now, that Rafale is loaded with Hammer. You can see them hanging off. Those are Hammer missiles. They're actually 250 kg bombs with they're like laser guided bombs with a guidance kit, but they've also got a rocket motor. So they've got a range of 60 kilometers.
So these are air to ground.
Air to ground, yes, air to ground, and very powerful. 250 kg is a lot because it's sort of half a city block would go with a 250 kg bomb. Now, so what happens now? What would be what is war? What is war? Now, if you have a situation where the Chinese or Pakistanis attack, or we attack them, you'll find that they have air support. Their aircraft are coming in, and you try to send in your aircraft, they'll try and shoot you down with the missiles on the ground, or they may have an S-300 or S-400. The Chinese are reported to have positioned an S-300 Russian missile system in Aksai Chin. So these things are going to pick up Indian aircraft and start shooting missiles at them. So how are we going to take this out? Now, this is one way. Break the door down. The Rafale will go in. The Rafale is it's got another feature. It's got, as far as I know, I think the Indian Rafales will also have it. It's got a terrain following feature. I think a lot of young people who followed Indian military aviation know that, for instance, 2 or 3 years ago, we tragically lost a MiG-29 somewhere in the Himalayas. And then there was this big hue and cry. Why don't our Indian aircraft have what is called as terrain following? That is to say, the aircraft itself, it follows the terrain and it prevents the pilot from accidentally losing, his concentration and flying into a hillside. So it has got terrain following features, and you could expect an aircraft like the Rafale to use its sensors, use its terrain following, and approach within 50 or 60 kilometers of a radar and shoot off 3 or 4 hammer missiles. One goes and hits the missiles, one goes and hits the radar, and whoop, it's silenced. And the minute it's silenced, you have other aircraft coming in and doing their bombing. Now, this is how things would normally pan out. And this is where the Rafale is going to be a very, very potent platform. We have others as well, but I don't think any of the ones we have are as good as the Rafale. I mean, it's top of the line as things stand. The Indian, of course, Air Force, of course, is very good. They do all these things. They do all these brave things. Because, one of the things that happened was once radars came into the picture, I'm going back a few decades, radar-guided missiles. So planes were flying in high, they were picked up by the radars and they were being shot down by missiles. If they came lower, they were being shot down by guns. So what to do? They started flying at 50 feet, literally 50 feet or 80 feet off the ground. And if you read old stories of the Indian Air Force, flying 50 feet off the ground at night, which is fantastic. They've done these things. At 50 feet off the ground, it's very difficult to pick them up. And then what happens is in fact, the Jaguar is designed for that. The plane zooms over, drops some munition, and there's nothing they can do about it. Unfortunately, what's happened now, the other side is what AWACS. The AWACS is flying high up. It's going to see the plane that's flying 50 feet above the ground. So what do? You have to somehow, get past all these electronic defenses. You have to fool the AWACS. You have to spoof the radars, destroy the radars, hit the missiles. This is air warfare. And once there is a local area which you have, I think the way India got complete air superiority over Bangladesh, or the way the coalition forces got complete air dominance over Iraq, is not going to happen nowadays. But that doesn't mean that we can't get local air dominance. For instance, Kargil, we had local air dominance. It was exactly that. Where was the PAF? No PAF. And in a sense, if you look at the Balakot strike, it was air dominance. Why was it air dominance? PAF didn't come. So there are ways of getting local air dominance to achieve certain ends. And this is where I think the Rafale will be extremely useful. So I'm ready to.
Yes, I mean, let me fire a few first before we go over to the viewers for questions.
Yeah.
Do you think the numbers are enough?
Numbers off.
And also, viewers, please keep your questions ready now, because I'll ask a few. After that, it's over to you all to ask questions.
Yeah.
And ask as many as you can. So, do we have enough of these birds?
No, right now we have only 5. But even one. See, if we are going to worry about 20 J-20s, they're going to worry about 5 Rafale as well. Rafale is very capable, because let's I'm talking about a theoretical scenario. I'm not in the Air Force, but if supposing you station S-300 missile system with its radars, you use 2 Rafales and knock it out. Fir kya hota? It's gone, knocked out. Then the rest of the guys, anything, even Hawk will go. Even trainer Hawk will go and bomb something, because the opposition is gone. So it's a threat. It's a definite threat. And I'm not talking about Meteor missiles but on 150 kilometer range. I'm talking about things like Hammer, Scalp, and the ground attack missions. The Indian Air Force is fully capable and fully valiant in conducting attacks under great threat situations. And I think when you play video games, you get shot down, you don't want to get shot down, or you read about how the coalition Air Force had very few losses. Things don't work that way. If you read Jasjit Singh's history, he analyzes the history of air warfare. He analyzes air battles, And he says, in the first few days of war, the attrition may be 4% of sorties. So a sortie is one plane doing one mission and coming back. So it's possible that plane can do 2 or 3 sorties. So if you have 100 planes doing 5 sorties each in a day, you would have flown 500 sorties. Okay. Now, if there is 4% attrition in 500 sorties, you take 4%. 4% is okay for the first day, okay for the second day. But after some 4 or 5 days, 4% means you would have lost a huge proportion of your air force. So in these 4 or 5 days, when you're having this 4% loss, that's the time to knock off their radars, knock off their command and control, knock off their fuel dumps, make holes in their airfield. Making holes in the airfields is not that effective. They'll fill it up. But destroy their aircraft on the ground, keep them away. That's the time you get a little bit of dominance, and you can push in and let the land forces do what they want to do. So yes, 5 is not enough. If you had 100, how would it be? But it's okay. 5 is good for a start. We are going to get 36, which is a very good number.
36 is a very good number, but we had originally asked for 126.
Yeah, that is so sad. You see, because as far as I know, the Indian Air Force originally wanted more Mirage 2000s, and suddenly the government came up and said, no, chodo, we don't want Mirage 2000. We'll have this big competition, MMARCA. We'll call every aircraft on Earth and Moon, Mars, everywhere, and have that. And by the time it was selected, we had no money. You just now you've seen. Excuse me. You've seen AK Anthony telling us we have no money. Maybe next year. It was ironic because maybe next year was the year of the election. It was 2014. So this is sort of, it was a hot potato. They dropped the hot potato on the next government. So anyway, 36 is a good number. How this will go forward is difficult to tell. A lot of people hope, and yes, it is nice. They'll say that a lot of people hope that we'll get more Rafales. Perhaps we will. I am also a fan of the Tejas, and I do hope that we make them in numbers and develop it. It's very important that we do that.
Talking of Tejas, since you mentioned Tejas,
sure.
So though it is not strictly the topic today, but how does Tejas fare against the JF-17?
I think Tejas will knock it out. Tejas will knock it out. I don't think it's a problem. Yeah, because if you're talking about a 1-on-1, I think 1-in-1, the Tejas is much better. The Tejas carries these missiles with helmet queuing. That is to say, the pilot has got a bindi on his helmet. He points the bindi at the target. The missile also looks at the target, fires it off. The Tejas also has got a degree of size is stealth. Small size is stealth. The problem about small size is that range is less. It carries less fuel, but size itself is stealth. And there was this very interesting, it was not Tejas, it was MiG-20. It was also a small aircraft. There was a report from one particular exercise. A lot of people will know this. That was conducted in Kalaikunda. The USAF F-15s were there. And the report was like this. Basically, they detected Indian aircraft coming. And they were Su-30s. So Su-30s apparently have this big radar signature. So they saw these aircraft and they suddenly heard, in fact, the pilots were talking on open channel. Suddenly they heard a signal, and suddenly from behind the Su-30s, MiG-21s appeared. So when they thought there were X number, maybe 3 or 4 aircraft, there were 8 suddenly. And they were, so what shall I say, bamboozled. This is the story, that where the IAF actually got the better of the USAF in an exercise. So there are things that can be done with small size. Range is a problem, and I think that will get better. And if I may say one thing, what did China do? China was flying absolute rust buckets. Earlier on, I showed a photo of the J-8, which was, and I've also shown pictures of F-7, which Pakistan was using. Pakistan was also using a thing called, I forget its name. It was a MiG-19. MiG-19 are 1950s aircraft. Chinese were using them till very recently. But what did they do when they were operating? People used to laugh. I used to read American articles saying the Chinese practice their fighting by just getting onto wooden mock-ups on the ground. They run, And they used to laugh. But what China said was, we'll use nuclear weapons if you act funny with us. So even though they didn't have a great air force, they had the gumption, the chutzpah, to say, okay, we'll knock you out with nukes, and everybody kept quiet. In the meantime, they developed themselves. And I think there is my personal opinion, is that we do have a good set of offensive, what shall I say, munitions that includes the BrahMos, the Prithvi, and those things. And we should use those as a threat against people who, act tough. In the meantime, develop our aircraft industry. This is my opinion.
Where's the AMCA project headed?
I am hopeful. See, I think our people are good. They do a good job. But it has to be funded properly, not in dribs and drabs, and it has to be pushed. There have been fairly, what shall I say, not very good relationships between the Air Force and the manufacturer for various reasons. I won't go into that. In fact, I can tell some personal experiences because, once again, talking to about my late cousin, after he retired from the Air Force due to medical reasons, he became a director at HAL. And he was in charge of flight safety and accidents. And he used to talk about how the Air Force and HAL were inimical to each other, and how he used to try and sort this out and bring better coordination. So that is necessary, good coordination between the manufacturer and the user. And if we push things, I'm absolutely certain that we can develop a great aircraft. We need to put money into it, and trust our people.
So since we are at it, I'm just curious to know how the Indian aircrafts beat the Pakistan air defense in Balakot.
In fact, I don't know the details, but see, this is not something that they're going to tell us. I think they just fooled them. I really have no. There are various ways. They had a feint. I am certain. That is, they had a feint, meaning that there were aircraft in some other area and the radars were turned towards that area. But I am absolutely certain that there was an amount of jamming and spoofing. Some of the good electronic equipment can be used for spoofing. That is to say that the radar signal that's coming towards you is given a kind of faltu fake signal, so it thinks something else, if it thinks anything at all. So there was definitely a degree of spoofing. And the other thing is, the important thing is, what we tend to forget is, if you watch, this is a Bond movie coming there, and Bond will spend 35 minutes, 40 minutes in a crashing aircraft fighting the villain. It's not like that. These people were quick in and quick out. I think the whole thing was just 25 minutes. So it was timed quick before they could react. So there were multiple factors in the way they did it, spoofing the radars and, feints and very quick timing. So this must have been the mechanism. This is the report. This is what they said. The details are not going to be released. And they all, everybody, everybody says that they actually have better proof of all the things that happened. They can't release it because the minute they release the better proof, they'll know what these fellows were up to, all the tricks were up their sleeve.
The other people will develop their counters, and that's not a very bright idea. Does Rafale have a naval version too?
Yes, Rafale has a naval version. Rafale is a very good aircraft. And apparently the only difference between the Air Force version and the naval version of the Rafale is the undercarriage. It's got because the naval aircraft come down hard and fast, bang down on the deck of the aircraft carrier. So it's a heavier undercarriage. But there is a good, excellent naval version. So obviously it's very tempting, when we talk about this, if the Navy is also looking for aircraft, what they're going to pick up and whether the proposed Indian naval aircraft is going to come, we have to see. Hopefully things will go well. I am hopeful that, it will do well.
So now what we do is that now we start taking up questions from the viewers. And those questions will flash on the screen. And Dr. Shastri would be taking those questions and answering them. So please keep firing questions. You can keep him engaged for as long as you like, but he will remain engaged only if you keep asking questions.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the first question comes up on the screen. This is Venkata Mandapati. He says, do we have enough quantity of these birds altogether?
No, we don't. It would be nice if we had more. In a conflict, we'll have to throw everything at any adversary. Hopefully, it won't come to that, but we would certainly like more. We don't have enough
I
of
think
those.
we already have a shortage of about 10 squadrons or something.
Yeah, see, we need about I think it's down to 30 squadrons. We need 15 squadrons more. And if we can, get 80, they say they've got 20 LCA, they're going to get another 80 more. That'll make 100. That still won't be enough. We still need 115, 120 more. Where that's going to come from is the big dilemma. It's a big mystery. And this is extremely frustrating. And I have been watching these things from the 1960s. And, it's never been up to strength. It's never been up to strength. And it's not right. I think sometime we got to get this up to. But, having said that, I've had friends and relatives in the Navy and Air Force, less so in the Army. And the Navy people keeps sort of not boasting, saying with pride that we depended on our own industry and we encouraged our own industry, so we are doing all right. Yeah, they're probably right, although there's things that we do import. So hopefully our industry will step up and give the Indian Air Force what it needs.
Yes, definitely, it does need to step up. So now we'll take up the next question. This is Kapil Chauhan. He says, as per India climate along border, US versus Russian engine technology wise, which one is better? How competitive will be Indian indigenous engine under AMCA?
Yeah, see, it's I think this, it has to be looked at this way. The American philosophy was to have engines that work for many thousands of hours, extraordinarily reliable engines. The Russian philosophy was a little bit different. The Russian philosophy was that, okay, in a war, you're going to have these planes. Supposing we have 500, they had very large numbers. We have 500 MiG 21s. Uh, the average life of MiG 21 in war is going to be about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It's going to get shot down. Why have an engine that lasts for 30 years when we can have an engine that just lasts for 3 months, because that's all it's going to last in war? That was the Russian philosophy. Now, when these two countries and other countries also started exporting to India, a completely new problem developed. One is dust. We have a lot of dust. So both sides had this issue of dust. And also, the other thing that India has that nobody else has, maybe Chile or Chile or some South American countries have, is the altitudes. We work at very high altitudes. You know what happened at, in Kargil? You have to drop bombs at very high. Air resistance is a big thing, because when you at sea level, at low levels, if you drop a bomb or if you fire a shell, a bullet, it slows down due to air resistance. That slowing is much less, so the trajectory will be different. Bombs will fall differently. Planes respond differently. When planes are flying in the Himalayas, the engine power is less. Quite apart from engine power, there's less air. So if this thing that you see in video games, the plane is zooming down between valleys and then zooming up. Plane may zoom down but may not have the power to zoom up. It'll go hit a hillside. So this is what happens in reality. So there are various factors. So India simply doesn't take Russian engines, American engines, and hope for the best. We test them, we use them. Engines are looked after like babies. So yes, I think I can't speak of American engines, but definitely there have been some Russian engines that have in the past given us trouble. I think I've heard that the Russians also have been cooperative and have helped with solving some of those problems.
Especially the MiG-21.
Yeah, MiG-21, MiG-29, to a certain extent, Su-30 also. The MiG-21 had several engine changes also. I've forgotten. I think one was R13 and R25, something like that. So, but Russians have an interest in this, so they've also helped with solving those problems. Engine technology, I wish India would get engine technology. And I might as well say online over here, one Air Marshal Philip Rajkumar is a friend of mine. He was a friend of my cousin. They've known me from the time I was 6 or 7 years old. And the day the Kaveri engine flew in Russia, I had a conversation with Air Marshal Rajkumar, who said they really should put it on some plane and fly it, but it's not done. So I don't know why it's not done. It's a little frustrating, but we should have done that.
Anyway, there's so many issues with the Kaveri engine that we keep hearing in the press. We don't really know how it is going to go.
See, there's a joke, because you see this. I showed a picture of the J-10 aircraft. I think the J-10 aircraft has an engine with the Chinese engine called WS-13, and the joke is that the WS-13 got that designation because it lasts for only 13 hours. After 13 hours, it breaks down of flying. So I don't know. No, not the other one. That one. Yeah. This is a joke, but but you see the point. If an engine works for 13 hours, run it for 10 hours and change it. Have 5 engines, run it for 30. That is the way to get experience. Anyway, that's my opinion. I'm, easy for me to say.
Next question, please. Abhimanyu Moite is asking, is Ambala and Hasimara the best air bases for Rafale jets to be deployed? How Pak China will react? Rafale jets are deployed closer to the border.
See, it's like this. If I want to, we can't fly because of COVID. If I want to fly to America, I don't have to go to Mumbai, or I don't have to go to the border. I can fly from where I am. This is Bangalore. Aircraft can fly to any part of the country within half an hour, 45 minutes. It doesn't matter. Keep them far away. If you keep an aircraft close to the border, they'll come and bomb the airfield. They may destroy the aircraft. Why do you want to do that? Keep it far away. Keep it in a place where it's central, safe from attack, and fly it out. After all, how long does it take to fly out? So I think it's a perfectly good choice. Where they are, they can go east, they can go west. So they can go north, south also. I think they're perfect.
Yeah, I mean, they are not very far, and they're not too close either. I mean, that's just about the correct range as far as I think.
The Air Force knows what it's doing. They know what they're doing.
Yes, certainly they are doing. So now we are we're almost coming to the end of this discussion, and now I've got the last question out. So let's throw the last questions. This is, when will AMCA and PACFA be developed? The $1 million question.
Yeah, it's $1 million. Well, the thing is, we hope they keep to the time. PACFA, I don't know. We're not interested in it anymore, as far as I know. AMCA, they have given some timelines. I don't know. They say that they'll have a first flight. I've forgotten the dates. I don't look at these dates because it's so frustrating. Because you keep hoping. I hope they stick to whatever dates they have given. I can't come. PACFA, we are not interested. So, if we become interested, it's a different thing. So PACFA is flying, isn't it? Is the Su-57 is what was the PACFA?
Su-57.
Yeah. But
I think Indians are now more interested in the Western aircrafts, which have far greater reliability and far better electronics. And after all, in the next generation is all about stealth and electronics. So that's where the Indian priorities lie right now. And if we are developing our own, we may probably be able to get the best from everybody, including something from the Russians. But that's doubtful. I think the technology in the West is far more advanced. So that's one. And while we were talking, there is one more question. So that also I'll put up. Yes, there's one more question. Let's have that. This is Ray Paston. What's the best India can afford? Is our spending wise?
God, this is an economics question.
It's a very loaded question.
It's a loaded question.
So what do you think?
What's the best? The thing is, I think India can afford to invest in its own industry and its own people. Okay, and we really need to do that, because it's a never ending game. Time and time again you hear that the minute India develops any particular technology, until you want a technology, the prices are very high. Supposing you want a missile seeker head, prices are very high. They'll say, okay, you make the missile for say 50 lakhs, the seeker head will cost you a crore, 1 crore, something. I'm just giving you an example. Until you develop the seeker head at home, then suddenly it will come down to 10 lakhs, their price, from 1 crore. So constantly, it is their livelihood. They've developed these things. They want to make money out of it. So these things are not being given free. Ultimately, we have to spend on ourselves. Once we spend on ourselves and make ourselves strong, we'll be able to afford a lot more things. So this is not a direct answer, because, but I think this is the best I can do.
Okay, and one more question has come in the meantime. This is Yogesh Soman. Is it really the Air Force or the Army that will play a part in the Himalayas?
For India, it has always been joint operations. I think it's important not to forget that we have the army in peacetime. Before all this Galwan and Pangong stuff started, we've had the army in the Himalayas. Who has been supplying them? There's the Air Force. So it's joint. The Air Force and Army are in it together. They're in the game together. So it's not that Army, because the thing is, as amateurs, we are always looking at the hatyar, or the guy with the sword, the gun. This is what we're interested in, the air-to-air missiles. But there's the support. They have to eat. People get high altitude sickness. They have to come back. They have to be supplied with fuel. People have to go. People have to come. So the Air Force is there with helicopters, with aircraft. So they are in it together. And it's only going to, if there is only Army will lose. If there's only Air Force will lose. But together, Army and Air Force, we will win. This is
That's great. I think that's the perfect note to end this discussion on. That together we will win. Thank you so much, Dr. Shastri. It's been a very enlightening discussion.
I hope so.
And we come to the end of this discussion today. And we will keep discussing these little facets and little nuggets of air warfare, of which you have developed considerable specialization. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank
Namaste.
you, Sanjay ji. Good night.